All right, welcome to your first and ever OMFL's first take here today with unfortunately the news of Nate, the commissioner, being down with the flu and not having a Press Pass live show today, as we do every Monday. Me and Maniac felt today would be a good day to get our show kicked off so we do not miss a beat with some OMFL content. I know myself and Maniac look forward to those Press Pass live shows. So we felt that we would pick up the opportunity to cover today's Press Pass live show with Nate being sick and cover the OMFL with 5 hot topics, which is what we're going to cover each show here on the first take. With no further ado, I'd like to welcome in Mr. Maniac. How are you doing today, buddy?
I am doing wonderful. Looking forward to this new show here with the first take here in the OMFL, and uh, excited to see how this goes. And I know there's some other co-hosts and stuff down the road coming on. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But excited for the show today, and get well, Nate, and hope you're doing better. Hope you can listen if you're around. But let's get it going, man.
Absolutely. So just kind of laying out first ever show what we're gonna do. We have 5 topics each week or so often that we're gonna do the show. We're gonna pick 5 topics. We're gonna cover those 5 topics, and it's just kind of a roundtable. We hope that you interact with us live there. If you are in the chat, you can drop some messages and interact with us. But Maniac and I are just going to kind of have a roundtable discussion back and forth, and just talk about these 5 topics, and we hope that we get some engagement from you guys. If you guys have some stuff that you'd like to have us cover, we are always open for suggestions. But with no further ado, let's get that going. So we are sitting in season 106 in week 14, and the playoffs are kind of shaping up, and it looks like an interesting picture. We've got some games that have taken place this week so far, with a few games left to be played. That would be interesting. I know one big one that I'm looking forward to is the Seahawks and the Niners this week, yet to be played. As things kind of shaping up here for their playoff run, and to see if the Seahawks can hold on. But our first topic that we're going to jump into is going to be pass rush with not being able to throw the ball, or no pass rush and being able to throw the ball. What would you more likely choose, or what would you prefer to have it be? Previous Madden last cycle, we felt like the pass rush was just off the edge. It was fierce. It was unstoppable. And so you had to really kind of get the ball out quick. And now this cycle, on the new Madden of Madden 24, we feel like the pass rush may not quite be as dominant or as present. And so, Maniac, I'm going to kind of throw this at you first and just kind of see your take on it. Would you rather have a pass rush and not be able to throw the ball as easy, or would you rather there be not as much pass rush or little to no pass rush and being able to kind of chuck the ball around the yard?
Yeah, sure. This was actually one of the topics that you asked me, and I came up with this one, and and you explained it very well. Talking about last Madden, and even I think the previous 2 Maddens, I think there was kind of an issue with the pass rush just being super deadly, and what that was doing within the league and in Madden in general was you were seeing guys basically with playbooks. They were only throwing slants, drags, super quick throws. Last Madden, the Madden before that, screenplays didn't work all that well, so those weren't really incorporated. We did see the RPO come to fruition in Madden once they implemented that into the game. But so it was kind of debilitating, I guess, in a lot of ways for the Madden game, for the Madden experience, and so it did limit the offense a lot because you would see a lot of guys, they would bump and run, play their coverage up because there was not a whole lot of fear of getting beat deep. Um, and and the, those things like that. Sometimes you can drive yourself bananas trying to as commissioners and people that are in charge of leagues trying to get a slider set that works, and it just makes for an awful experience for everyone involved. But I would hope that Madden would eventually get to where they're able to um, make this a little bit more straight down the road where it works. They need to explain their sliders better. I think that would be a start. I don't think they explain their sliders to the extent that they need to. But for me, looking at these two titles that we're choosing from, I would take uh, uh, no pass rush, being able to throw, because then that opens up more of the playbook for the offense. And you guys seem to always somehow generate pass rush, or at least most do. I know there's sometimes some cases where you don't see it, and the ideal situation would be within the Madden game is to have both those working properly, where you do get some good pass rush sometimes, and you do get some good pass blocking at times, and so that would just open up the playbook. So, but for me, I'm going with no pass rush, being able to throw, because again, I think that kind of broadens the experience of the Madden game as a whole, for the league and for the OMFL and whatever. But pass rush with not being able to throw the ball, to me, that just it limitates the offense on what they can do. Because again, like I said, it just you've seen guys that have stellar defensive backs um, play bump and run. You can't get your wide receivers off the line of scrimmage, which some wide receivers are really good, and you would have a 70 overall DB, dominating a 90 overall wide receiver. So to me, that just kind of debilitates the game a little bit more. And again, like I said, guys can normally generate some type of pass rush either by using the defensive line or blitzing. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take. I mean, I am looking, and as you were talking, I pulled up the kind of the league stats. And the first thing I'm going to say is obviously it's a video game. It's not perfect. I mean, the sliders can be adjusted, but then when you start messing with sliders, it puts a lot of stress on like the leadership of the commissioners and the board of any league, not just our league here in the OMFL, but any league. It really puts a lot of stress on them. Games start to be playing a little bit differently and whatnot. So I mean, ultimately, we're kind of at the mercy of the developers, what the game is, what the game gives us, and what we have to work with. Um, you know, again, I pulled the stats up, and you can kind of see as I'm flipping through the league leaders team by team. I find it really interesting, just in comparison. We're sitting in week 14. The NFL's through 5 weeks. The leader of the OMFL currently is TJ Watt, and he has 10 sacks. And the leader in the NFL in real life is also TJ Watt, and he has 8 sacks. So you're looking 5 weeks into the regular season in real life. He has 8 sacks, but in the OMFL through 14 weeks, he's got 10 sacks. Same guy leading. I mean, it's interesting to see that the same guy is the leader, but
Mm.
the number is a little bit like lower per game. I mean, you're looking at maybe about 1.5 or just shy of that per game in real life, to where almost like maybe 0.75 or so per game in the OMFL. The other thing that's interesting is you kind of look at the leaders in real life. You got TJ Watt, Cleo Mack, Daniel Hunter, Trey Henderson, Josh Allen, Leonard Floyd, Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, but we're talking Aiden Hutchinson. We're talking 4.5 sacks to 8 sacks. It's like the top 10. You look at the OMFL, and we're looking about 6 sacks up. And a lot of the names do correlate. TJ Watt, Will Anderson, high draft pick, Lucas Van Ness, another high pass rush draft pick, Quinnen Williams, Myles Garrett, DeForest Buckner, Chase Young, Josh Allen, Vita Vea, Will McDonald, another specialist pass rush that was a rookie, Josh Sweat, and then Matthew John. So there are a couple names that fall on both lists, which I do find interesting. But again, here's kind of the interesting part. For me, last Madden, I had a guy, and I'm just speaking from my experience. I had a guy named Tyson Cash who, he wreaked havoc. It was on any opposing offense, he was just wrecking havoc in people's backfield. And on the flip side of things, I had the other guy that I can't think of his name at the moment, but these two guys literally were the staple of my defense. And so at any point in time, one of those guys usually was in the backfield, and I was sitting usually at the top 5 or 6, 7 of sacks with one of those guys. This cycle, Tyson Cash, which was my import, I have him as an outside linebacker. Once again, nothing's changed, but he's at 2.5, doesn't even lead my team. And then 2.5 sacks through 13, 14 weeks. It's very, very much different. And as I look across just my team, I've got, 3, 2.5, 2.5, and then a couple guys here at 2. And then, but you look at the positions that I'm bringing pressure from: defensive tackle, middle linebacker, outside linebackers, Russian, another middle linebacker, a corner, an outside linebacker, another middle linebacker, a defensive tackle. It's coming from all angles. And so I think what you talked about a little bit is, the aspect of guys will find a way, and bringing the blitz or usering at some capacity. I'm not a big fan of the user in D line because I think it's a little OP at times, but I think in certain situations, you kind of have to have it a little bit. And so I can kind of argue for both ways. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a fan of it when it becomes like an every play thing, but it's not against the rules. And so, if you're going to sit back and you're not as good at covering and you just don't want people to have time, you can change a game using a guy like Chris Jones or, DeForest Buckner or somebody in the inside to create a mismatch or create a team to kind of have to get the ball out quick. So, and that's part of what we talk about is the chess match, and why the FPR is the way it is to open up that endless opportunities and for you to be creative. Are you going to bring a blitz? Are you going to, just sit back and rush 3, 4 guys and hope that the pressure gets there? Then you got, 6, 7 guys in coverage. Or if you're running, rushing 3, are you leaving 8 in coverage, hoping that max coverage does its job? Again, it becomes a chess match, which I do like. So I would say I would lean more towards this cycle and not having as much pass rush. But I also am going to make the argument, if we could find like maybe a little bit happy medium in the middle, and maybe tailor a little bit more towards this cycle and not be as reliant on having a blitz. But again, we're at the mercy of the game, what it gives us. But if I had to pick one or the other and there was no option to kind of tweak it or fine tune it, I would say I'd pick this Madden, just because last Madden, there was times where you could take a guy that just had high finesse, skill sets and just come off the edge, and he was getting pressure almost every play. And that just didn't really open up the door for to me to be more of like a chess match in certain ways. So I would definitely agree. I would lean a little bit more towards this cycle than last Madden. But it's hard to see 10 sacks through 14 weeks, and then obviously real life. And I always say, like, Madden as a video game, you're always going to see like those inflated stats, like sacks, receiving yards, rushing yards. It's a video game, so you expect that. And here we are, we're talking 10 sacks through 14 games. That's like almost deflated stats, which is interesting to see. But at the same time, I would also then throw a curveball into the argument or into the discussion is you don't see, we do see some high scoring games, but we're still seeing games in the 20s or low 30s, which is pretty comparable to real life scores. So even though the stats aren't quite there, we're not seeing like a ton more points scored on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and you know, it's one of those things. I think like the developer with EA, you know, since we were talking about it, I was just sitting here thinking of it. A lot of the other games that we've played, you know, they'll have like a setting. Do you want to experience more so and so this part of the game? Do you want to have more this and that? Do you want to see more uh, scoring, or do you want to see more? And I think maybe that might be something that EA, which I know they're probably not going to do it, but maybe they should. If they're listening, if they ever listen to this, hello EA Sports, talking to you. Um, they should put a they should put a slider or an indicator in there. If you would like an experience to have more pass rush in your game, or would you like to be able to score more points with less defensive pushback? You know, these are the sliders you need to adjust, or slide it to this setting or whatever, and then it'll give you kind of what you're looking for. You know, if you're looking for that extra uh, pass rush ability, or you want your lines to block better. You know, those type of things. I think that maybe if they would incorporate, like, if this is the experience you're looking for, try this. If this is the experience you're looking for, try that.
Yeah.
So maybe just the sense of explaining their game more on the sliders would go so long, and I think that would help to improve the overall game experience for their consumers.
I mean, and so on that point, like I know when you play like hockey, it asks for like what type of experience or skill set you have. Are you like arcade? Are you more like a veteran, type of, and you pick one of the four levels, when you first crack the game open and are playing it. And I agree, maybe that is a setting. But at the same time, I think Madden has that like simulation style or competition style setting. And I think that's what they were going for, but it just hasn't really hit home or been a home run hit, kind of like they hoped. And a lot of things that they've done haven't really been even a base hit, let alone a home run for them in terms of baseball. Like, but it's been a challenge. The one thing I will like as I'm flipping through these teams, I find it interesting, and I hate to give the guy credit, but I would say that the two teams that I've noticed, I mean, since he's got TJ Watt performing pretty well from the top of the league standpoint, but two teams that I really did not expect to be on the top of the list in my mind, as far as sacks and stuff go. Um, in second place, I would put Roger with the Texans. I mean, he's got Will Anderson, a rookie, with 8.5. He's got a couple guys with 5.5, and then a few other guys that have one or two, 2.5, type of deal. But the guy that really I think is probably leading the league from a whole is Brees with the Packers. I mean, he's got several guys with like 5.5 sacks. Lucas Van Ness is up there, I think, like second or third in the league with 8.5. Then he's got Clenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, and Cameron Walker, all with 5.5. Preston Smith with 5. Devontae Wyatt with 3. And then he's got guys that just have like a half a sack or a sack and a half. Like, but from a standpoint, like overall as a team, like the numbers are there. He just doesn't have those like crazy inflated like 17 sacks or 20 sacks at this point. But as a league, no one has that, right? But for his team, he's getting multiple guys there at different times that are performing from a league. And like I said, I hate to give him the credit because he's in my division, but from a team standpoint, like he's got his team performing well from a sack standpoint.
Yeah,
All right, so
I do. I just want to iterate
yeah,
this here. I like looking at the stats and stuff, and you know, a lot of times you can kind of tell like trends and stuff by just looking at the stats of teams, and it was just kind of odd that you were talking about Priest there, because I was looking through there and I was like, man, Priest has got several guys already, like with so many sacks, and like he's doing better than lot of a lot of teams and stuff. And I just want to speak on my team itself. Like Lorenzo Carter, like he has 6 sacks, and probably a couple weeks ago he only had, I think, like 2 or 3 possibly. So he's actually had a better couple last game. So maybe with whatever changes that have been made, maybe it is making an improvement there and stuff. So, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, in comparison, as Nate always says, I'm in a million leagues, but I was not planning on playing in a million leagues this year. But with my status of being out of work, I kind of feel like I have a little more time to put towards Madden. So I've joined a few extra leagues. And just in comparison to one of my other leagues, being the SFL league that I'm in, their sack leader through 11 weeks is Chris Jones. He has 12, and Aaron Donald has 11. And then third place is actually Grover Stewart from the Colts was 7.5. So I mean, they're statistically not like off the charts either. Maybe a little bit higher on the first 2 guys, Donald and Jones, which you would expect them to probably be up there anyways. But they're not like blowing our stats out of the water. So again, I think it is a game and a product standpoint more or less than anything. And obviously we can start to tweak things, but when you start to tweak things, there's just so many factors that go into, like, if you're tweaking pass block, then it becomes okay. Like you said, does that 70-year-old, or not 70-year-old, 70 overall
Hey,
defensive
Daddy.
tackle, yeah, defensive tackle or defensive end, does he become like performing like a Aaron Donald or Chris Jones, and you don't want that per se. So it's just it's a fine line that you have to ride. But yeah, I think we're both in agreement on the same thing. Like no pass rush and being able to throw the ball definitely opens things up. And then you have to kind of get creative on how to force either max coverage and make windows tight. Um, the one thing I would say in correspondence with the sacks is at least there are some knockouts this year. So it does make it a little bit harder for the ball to be caught in traffic. So in the max coverage
Mm.
standpoint, you've got that to not just be like, okay, the guy's going to throw for 500 yards against me every week. And if he is, then you need to like adjust yourself, like, and get better strategically of maybe taking away some things that player is doing, and play that chess match. But for our second topic of this show, we're going to move on to that is run versus pass. And this is, how does the OMFL compare or relate to real life in comparison to the OMFL currently? And again, through 5 weeks, I'm going to pull up the statistically leaders for offense. We've got Tua's leading the league with about 1,600 yards. This is real life through 5 weeks. He's got 1,600 yards. You've got Kirk Cousins about 1,500. CJ Stroud 1,400. Matt Stafford 1,400, and they're averaging anywhere from low sevens to about 8. But Tua's kind of that outlier at 9.7 yards per pass. Throwing for anywhere from mid 200s yards to about 300 yards per game, and the completion percentages are typically, you find around the 60s, maybe low 70s. So that is something. I'm going to pull up the stats here in the OMFL. But then also rushing wise, you've got Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, Zach Moss, DeAndre Swift, and Travis Etienne for the top 5 rushers in the league. They're about 400 yards to McCaffrey, leading the league at 510, about 100 yards per game, and averaging, Etienne's 4.2, Swift's 5.7, Zach Moss is 5, the chain's kind of off the charts at 12.1 yards per carry. And then Christian McCaffrey is 5.2. As I pull up these OMFL stats, I mean, how do you feel just overall, like looking above, what do you feel like? Do you feel the OMFL is kind of matching up to real life and being more of a sim league? Do you think that we're off the charts or not, not quite where we want to be or should be? Like, where do you feel we fall on that?
Oh, I was just kind of crunching some numbers right quick while you were talking, and just for instance, the Dolphins, they're the top passing team right now in the OMFL with 4,257 yards. And we've got what 3 or 4 weeks left in the season, I think. So we're basically 3/4 of the way through the season, and if you were to break that down and divide that into three, which would be the 3 parts of the season we've already done, that's about 1,400 yards in each quarter. So that is kind of comparable because we're looking at the first quarter of the season in the NFL already passing. So that is kind of comparable numbers. I'm seeing that there's a definite difference with the top team that is a top passing team compared to the teams that are having quarterback struggles or young quarterbacks that are rookies. You'll see that they're kind of like on the bottom end of that. Now there are some teams just
Mhm.
like Dwayne and the Cowboys. He doesn't have a whole lot of passing yards, but that's not his game. His game is to run the ball, and he's one of
Yeah,
the top
Palmer Luck.
rushers. And but a lot of those teams like the Texans and the Condors and Saints and the Titans, they've either got young quarterbacks in or they've got aging quarterbacks they're trying to get rid of eventually. Um, but you can kind of see the correlation between the OMFL and the NFL with those stats. Personally, I'm one to um, I like to run the ball. That there's no secret to that. I want to run the ball. I look for ways to make sure I run the ball and try to run it effectively. And guys that stop my run force me to pass. And that tends to mess with me and stuff. Here I am giving away how to beat me, but that was another reason why I went out and tried to get a good quarterback in the OMFL. And so I've got one. So hopefully, that'll pay off dividends in the long run. But the run versus pass, I think it is very comparable to the NFL with the OMFL, and that to me, I think speaks a lot about um, at this point of this Madden, how it's comparing to that, and I think it points good to the leadership in the OMFL and how they've done a good job to make those things be comparable. I mean, to the real life thing.
Right. So I definitely agree with you. I think I don't give EA a lot of credit, but I will say EA has done a pretty good job from our league on how we playing on 10-minute quarters, 9-minute quarters, and kind of opening up the play calling ability with the FPR standpoint. I think the numbers really fall in line from a yardage standpoint. Um, your top teams like Miami, he's kind of sitting above everybody else. But again, Tua in real life is sitting above everybody else. But then you have, Kirk Cousins, CJ Stroud, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Sam Howell, Brock Purdy, Goff, Hurts. They're kind of all in that top 10 range, but they're all bunched in. And if you look at, as I've got the stats pulled up here, I just hit the wrong button. Blase, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Ryder, Deshaun Watson, Burrow, Mahomes, Hooker, Herbert, like they're all right around that 3,000 to 3,800 yards. And then, from a standpoint of completions, you go, look, I said the majority of looking at the first 5 weeks, most of those quarterbacks are throwing 60% to like low 70s. You're going to see a lot of high 50s and and into the 60s. But then you're going to have your outliers, Blase at 49%, Ryder at 57, Deshaun Watson at 52. But most of these are 58 to in the 60s, so that falls in line as well. Yards per game, mid 200s, 230, 40, 50 on up to 300. Again, falls in line. The only one that really outlying is the Dolphins with hitching well over 300. Yards per attempt, you're a little bit higher, but again, it's a video game. I expect it to be on the high end. Whereas, and they run, probably 15, 20 more plays a game in real life than we do in a video game in our league. If we were to run, full quarter lengths, I mean, we would probably be able to have more plays, but then that yards per attempt, they're going to probably be the same. So again, there's the majority or the main statistics, yards, completion percentage, yards per game. They're there. They're in line with real life. Switching over to the running, comparing, 5 yards per carry. We've got, the majority of the league is in that high fours or low fives. You've got outside of Jonathan Taylor, but Fournette, McGee, Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Joe Gibbs. Everyone's pretty much like and so on down. Everyone's like 4.8 to like 6, and in real life, everyone's pretty much like 4 to like high 5. So again, that's right in line. You're looking at yards per game right around 100. Everyone, is 88 to about 100, except for Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor was like just on a roll. And I think a lot of what the OMFL, again, as we switched over and opened things up, which I do like because, as Nate said, change with the change with allowing people to play more like the NFL does. We've allowed that, and you're going, and as we're discussing, you're seeing the correlation and the comparison be in line. You're going to have an outlier or two that stand out, and Jonathan Taylor was one. But the Colts have a great offensive line. Jonathan Taylor is an elite running back, and I think Jonathan Taylor would probably be up at the top of the ranks in the NFL because his teammate Zach Moss currently sits third in the NFL in rushing, and that's Zach Moss is benefiting from a great offensive line in real life, and they run the ball consistently. And so Jonathan Taylor, was vouching for wanting a higher contract, and now he just got signed to that extension in real life. But it's like I said, it's not like we've someone's taken 70 overall or a 65 overall running back and just ran away with it. I mean, he's got Jonathan Taylor. He's using his superstar running back. And the problem is Jonathan Taylor was on such a tear, but not having to have guys worry as much from an FPR standpoint about getting that 80-20 carriage for their backup running backs. You can kind of run your top running back, but you really take a risk of running him into the ground and getting him hurt. And when he gets hurt, now you don't have the confidence in your backups. And so Jonathan Taylor missed a game or two, but even in the game that Jonathan Taylor missed, the Condors in the OMFL had Zach Moss. I think he played an 8, and I think Zach Moss ran for like 190 yards or something. So the recipe's there. It's in line. I think in comparison, OMFL to real life, we've done a really good job, and kudos to, again, I hate giving EA credit, but kudos to that, and kudos to Nate to kind of find, hey, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever we're at per quarter length, and building this FPR the way we've opened it up, I think it's all kind of funneled down into the lane that we and the kind of the target that we want. And so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, man, he's on another level right now. He's just he's just shredding it with it. I watched one of his games and like his O line was like opening holes that you could literally drive like a
Yeah.
virtual truck through. I mean, it's just like, he could go left, he could go right, he could go up the middle. It's like, oh my gosh, but yeah, that I do think that those things do fall in line, and I'm kind of curious to see. I mean, it's pretty much given. I think Taylor's going to get the 2,000-yard mark,
Yeah. Unless he has
unless
an
the injury bug. Yeah, the injury bug has been known to strike late in the season, so Peepers open for that one.
Yep. And like I said, Zach Moss right behind him. I mean, the guy's got 56 carries for 363 yards, averaging 6.5 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's clear cut the number one guy, but like Moss still has good production behind him. So like if he can keep Jonathan Taylor healthy, he's going to hit that 2,000 yards. But even when Taylor missed a couple weeks, Zach Moss stepped in pretty nicely. And the other thing that's funny is, we're looking at real life Devon Kane for the Dolphins has been just like phenomenal, like big play guy. And I look at him here in the OMFL, like as a speedster on Massimo's team. I mean, he's got 4.3 yards per carry, 10 rushing touchdowns, and he's got 758. But that's really not Massimo's game. Massimo slings the ball, dumps it out to his receivers. But a Kane is still producing, so is Mostert, but just not the number of carries that most teams are. But again, that's not Massimo's style. The Chiefs now have Christian McCaffrey due to the trade, but McCaffrey's 4.2 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. And D Money, who would have had McCaffrey, has Pacheco and producing very well with Pacheco. So, I mean, again, I 100% am in line with how things are going. Bijan Robinson for you's done well. I mean, we look at it across the board. I think things are going pretty well in comparison to real life run and pass. Third topic here, as we keep the show moving along. This one's a fun one. I don't know where we're going to go with this, so I'm interested. So I'm going to have you kind of hit it off. But we have 2 undefeated teams left, and that's the New York Jets with Kobe and Cincy Icebergs, Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm curious to see what's your take. Who is the bigger powerhouse, and what team do you want to avoid on your schedule, and why? Jets versus Steelers.
Okay, so this obviously I just got through playing the Jets here a couple advances ago, and I will say that team is a juggernaut. I mean, he's got that offense humming. They've got speed pretty much at every position. He's got a exceptional offensive game plan that it is hard to stop, definitely. And so the Jets, I think. I haven't played the Steelers. I know the Steelers team a little bit because I was supposed to be that team, but we did the swap, and but Cincy, for whatever reason, him and Ritter are like they're like the match made in heaven for the OMFL franchise, because those two just click, and it don't make sense when you look at the overall rating of Ritter, and but Cincy just knows how to use that quarterback, that style quarterback, and he left one Madden with Ritter a champion, and now he's pushing for another championship with Ritter on a different team, probably a less as good of team, or probably less than he had with the last Madden, because he's kind of stuck with what team he got dealt with. His Madden just it came out a couple months ago, but compared to building the Colts in Madden 23. But as of right now, I've got to take the Jets and Kobe until something proves differently. I don't know if these guys are going to face off in the regular season before the playoffs. It would be interesting if they do. But well, that didn't sound good. Uh, broken mirror. But the actual uh, playoffs, when they do happen, I do think that these two, if that's the way it falls with the seeding, they will be the two that are actually playing for the championship to go to the OMFL Bowl 106. Now, for my schedule, who do I want to avoid on my schedule? Probably right now, I don't know. It seems like I've got the Condors, and my team does struggle some, I think, against the run. So that team is probably going to rack up some yards against me. So that's going to be probably one I want to avoid. I'm not really looking forward to playing the Bears, but the Bears have kind of been up and down. Nothing against you. Saints are another team. It seems like even if they're 4-10, he's still going to be a very strong outing. No matter how his team is built. So he always plays me well. I think he kind of has my style down. So he knows how to attack me, and that's just part of the chess match of what is the OMFL. So, but yeah, my take is Jets are the bigger powerhouse currently, and I want to avoid the Condors going through the rest of the schedule of my season.
Obviously. So, I mean, the Jets, Steelers, both teams have been dominant. Both teams obviously winning games, have not taken a tally in the loss column yet, and that is something that is a past. I know Cincy last week played Joker, and it was a close game until the late fourth quarter. Joker's turned some heads with the Cardinals team and surprised some people. But when you look at it, I mean, the Jets were a team coming into real life before Madden even dropped, with all the hype of Hard Knocks and everything else. The Jets were the team that everybody thought was going to be the team to be reckoned with. And then week one, like 4 plays in, Aaron Rodgers snaps his Achilles, and things turn over to Zach Wilson, and things have just not been the same. The hype, everything. Brees Hall hasn't been really let go until this week in real life. And obviously Garrett Wilson's a stud, but it's a different beast when you've got Aaron Rodgers throwing in the ball compared to Zach Wilson. But for what we're here for is the OMFL. Aaron Rodgers is healthy, and he is slinging the rock very well. He's got 3,686 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, only 14 interceptions with a 68% completion percentage, throwing the ball for 283.5 yards per game, averaging 10.4 yards per pass. I mean, that is MVP stats if I haven't seen them before. Leading an undefeated team, throwing the ball like that. Then he's got Dalvin Cook, he's got Brees Hall, which are both number one running backs, and neither one of them is performing like Jonathan Taylor, but he doesn't need that. I mean, he's got 5.7 yards per rush with Cook and 5.9 yards per rush with Brees Hall. Brees Hall has 11 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's got the rushing game effective enough to keep you off balance. And then in the passing game, he goes and makes a trade and gets Mike Williams from the Chargers, which are in some money issues. But he's got the big body 6'4" receiver, and then gets Garrett Wilson, McCole Hardman, and even the tight end Tyler Conklin. And he's spreading it around with Brees Hall out of the backfield as well. And it's just a matchup nightmare because you've got speed, as you said, with Hardman and Garrett Wilson. You've got the back coming out of the backfield. You've got a tight end that's athletic enough to be a mismatch. And then you've got the big body receiver in Mike Williams. I can't say it enough. I mean, yes, Kobe was kind of gifted and handed a great team out of the box with the Jets. This is his team. We know what Kobe's capable of with the Jets, and he's doing it. He's living it up to his expectations. And I mean that's a team that I would not want to see because I don't have the defensive backs to match up to this. And I mean defensively, I went and was looking at some things. Mac Townsend, I think, is an import, has 10 sacks. Quentin Williams, big Q in the middle of the defense, has 7. And then, I mean, interceptions, you have Adrian Amos, a vet safety, Sauce Gardner with 7, Devin Bush, an athletic linebacker with 5, got Clark with 3. I mean, this team gets turnovers. They're getting after the quarterback, and then you hand the ball over offensively, and he can hit you from the run, the pass, and take care of the ball. He's got a vet quarterback. This team's scary. But as you said, Ritter is like kind of that guy that Cincy feels comfortable with, and he's almost producing some of the similar stats. Not quite as much in yards, but 38 touchdowns, a few more interceptions, but I would expect that from a Desmond Ritter compared to an Aaron Rodgers out of the box. But Ritter's throwing for 250 yards per game, and I've watched a handful of games where Desmond Ritter is at halftime and has 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, or 2 touchdowns or something. And since he's putting his backups in and playing with, you know, his 5th, 6th, 7th receivers, and things just change, you know, like when you're playing with those receivers, the routes and how the route running and everything, and then he might throw a couple picks. So I also put that into consideration. The Steelers team is not as potent out of the box as the Jets are, but he's handing the ball off to Najee Harris. He's got Jalen Warren, Calvin Austin on the jet sweeps and stuff, which is kind of a play out of the old playbook from Trey and the Lions and a few other players or owners here in the OMFL. But here's I think the key that I look at is since he's got Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, both at elite status with 14 touchdowns and 13, you can't pick and choose which one. You have to cover both. And neither one of them is that quote-unquote Madden speed demon like a McCole Hardman. And then he's got the money man, Patty French fries, tight end that's just like sure hands guy and kind of, you know, cleaning things up in the middle and you know, whatnot as well. Since he's proven himself playing with a team, like you said, with Ritter and the Colts last cycle, I'll be honest, I don't want to see either one of these teams on my schedule. I would have, if I had to pick right now, I think I would rather avoid the Jets just because their defense is a little bit better. And I feel like myself, I can score points with some of the best. But when I have a defense like the Jets, who have a shutdown corner, good defensive linemen, athletic linebackers, that's a recipe for disaster. But I'm not going to shy away and say that the Steelers' defense isn't something to overlook because Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's got Joey Porter, and then his import, Dexter Connor at corner, TJ Watt. I mean, he's got some guys, Corey Trice, that are making a lot of plays and getting some turnovers himself. And I think in a season or two, the Steelers' defense will be better than what the Jets' defense is right now. And with Aaron Rodgers getting older and Desmond Ritter being young and upcoming, I think the Steelers team for the cycle is a team that I would avoid. But for season 106, I'm going to avoid the Jets.
Yeah, that's a good take. And with the Steelers, they've got some kind of older pieces that I think eventually he'll move away from. Um, but I think he has a little bit younger team overall than the Jets do, so I think that's gonna prove uh, to be helpful down the road. I think there's a lot of guys on the Jets that are, especially on their D line, they're getting older. They're going to start probably regressing some, and I know the Steelers do have a couple guys also that are older as well. But I think overall they have a stronger nucleus of younger guys that they'll be able to build around, and of course the none bigger than the quarterback that probably after this season he'll probably get a big dev bump in the off season, and he's gonna uh, probably be he'll be a superstar or X factor and an 85 overall before long, and he's gonna have him probably pretty much the rest of the cycle. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it turns out though. So good stuff,
Yeah,
man.
for sure. And I'm looking at like the Jets roster. I mean, obviously Rodgers is 39, but like Dalvin Cook, he's probably not going to
Old
re-sign.
man Rogers.
Yeah, but Dalvin Cook's probably not going to be re-signed at 28. He's got Brees Hall at 24. But I mean, some of the other backs like can fill in and do what Dalvin Cook's done. I mean, Brees Hall can take on more of a load, anyways. But then like his receiving core is young. Conklin's 28, and I mean, you can find another tight end that's got that athletic ability. He does have an older offensive line, a couple of young guys at right guard and right tackle, but his defensive line actually 24, 25, and 26 years old. And then the middle linebacker, CJ Mosley, is 31, so that he's kind of on the out. Carl Lawson depends on where he's at on the contract. He's 28, but both his corners, 23, 26, 24, and 23. Adrian Amos is 30. So I mean, there's a couple guys, but I mean, the Jets are going to be good. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think Kobe's a good enough owner. He'll replace some of those guys too. But I do like, again, the Steelers. Joey Porter, Corey Trice, Dexter Connor, all young. Minka, still, I think he's like 28. TJ Watt's like 28. Hayward in the middle is going to be a big fill for him. But his offensive line's young. Pickens and Deontay are still good enough. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, both like low 20s. Dubs and Ritter's like 22, 23, 24. So, I mean, he's got a lot of more youth and less holes to fill. But it's going to be how he manages the cap. That's going to be the big thing.
Now I kind of want to know though. Do
Yeah,
you think Rogers retires after this season?
I do. I think he does retire.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I'm kind
we'll
of I'm
see.
kind of leaning that way too. But
We'll see. Topic number 4. What combination, and this is going to be probably a little bit less talking, but what combination is the most deadly or lethal combination in the OMFL? Not based 100% on stats, just basically you're a defensive guy lining up across from these guys. Who do you feel is the hardest combination to go up against? And the guys that we have here, we have the Dolphins with Hitchens and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. We have the Giants with Blase and Hyatt, the rookie. The Bucks with Steven Ryder, Godwin, and Evans. The Rams with Deshaun Watson, Cooper Kupp. The Steelers with Ritter and Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. The Bengals, Joe Burrow and Chase. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers with Garrett Wilson and Hardman. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes and Dexter Clinton. Or the Bears with Fields and Moore. That group has basically kind of been the top portion of the guys in the passing game so far this OMFL season. But I'm just looking at combinations. Which one do you feel is the most deadly or lethal combination that you do not want to be up against?
hmm. This is kind of a fun one. I mean, to be honest, like you just look at it like just for the sake of calling, because I made this mistake and I called uh, his quarterback Blase before, and he's like, it's not pronounced Blase, it's Blaze. If he's listening, there you go, Colin. I'm taking up for your quarterback, so he doesn't sound so feminine.
All right,
Uh,
so Blaze.
oh, but I mean, each one of these, I mean, they're deadly in their own right. And probably the the worst team record wise on this is the Rams with the Watson and Cup, but he's put up some phenomenal numbers with them and stuff. He's had some struggles figuring some things out. But I'm gonna give like three different choices here. I don't know if I can actually like pick one. Um, Number three for me, I think, is just from the standpoint of knowing him. I've played him twice already. The Buccaneers, Ryder, Goodwin, Evans. He has both games he played against me. Both wide receivers had over 100 yards receiving. Both had at least one touchdown, if not more touchdowns uh, per receiver against me. So he's just a tough out with that quarterback. Goodwin and Evans catching the passes, and I kind of think like he just kind of needs a tight end also. Gosh, I hope you don't really get a tight end though. So Kevin, if you're listening, don't pay attention to what I just said. You don't need a tight end. So the next one I would look at would be number two for me would be Ritter, Johnson, and Pickens. Again, I almost feel like since he could probably put in the punter and probably still have a heyday passing, but just Ritter and Cincy, uh, they're just like a match made in heaven, So I don't know. He throws the ball so well with him. He minimizes mistakes. Johnson and Pickens are kind of like the perfect wide receiver combination for his style of offense. So he would be my number two. And then also playing the Jets, Rodgers, Wilson, and Hardeman. To me, I think they're the top um, deadly, most lethal combination right now. And then just I would say an honorable mention is Hitchens, Hill, and Waddle. I think that team is on up and rising. I think he's still going to have some struggles probably in the playoffs, but I look for him to continue to build that team, and he's going to be a force throughout the rest of this Madden. But my top teams is the Jets with Rodgers, Wilson, and Hardman. They're hard to stop. I mean, you can take away the top, he'll get you underneath. You take away the underneath, he'll get you over the top. And then if you think you got both of those covered, and then here comes a screen pass, here comes a wheel pass, and it's just a tough offense to cover. So give the nod to Kobe and the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, you got definitely brought a point, and I like what you said. It's you can't pick one. I mean, that's what's kind of fun about this is because it's not based. We're not saying it's based off stats. I mean, if we're only based off stats, Miami's one. I mean, Hitchens is at the top. Cup's right there at the top in receiving yards, but Hyatt's there. And it's not based off of records either. So that's kind of what our take is here. But for me, I'll go top three as well, and I'm gonna throw in. I think for the long term, this is definitely an order that would change. But for season 106, which we're currently in, I think the top team passing the ball, in my opinion, is let's see. I think I'm gonna go with Kevin with Ryder. Import quarterback. He's running the ball well with Fournette, but he's got Mike Evans, he's got Godwin, and I mean they're both lethal with like the yards over there, the touchdowns are there, everything's there, and Ryder is an elite quarterback, and you can't like shade the Mike Evans side, you can't shade the Godwin side, and you know, both are playmakers, and Ryder puts the ball on the money. And so I would put him as my number one. I did play him earlier this season, and it was a matchup from hell. Um, but I also would put that as my number one team. My number two team, I would have to say, is probably, and I would agree with the Steelers. And I would say the Steelers because since he plays so well with Ritter and you watch his games, he like attacks you from all angles, all parts of the field, short, deep, over the middle, everything. And Deontay Johnson is kind of that like underrated superstar in my opinion. He's got the numbers at 14 touchdowns, just shy of 1,200 yards, but he catches the ball in traffic, gets open. He's only 5'10". He doesn't have that frame like Mike Evans does. But then you got Pickens, who's the up and coming receiver, who is a little bit taller. Pickens is 6'3". He got a little bit of speed on him, but doesn't have quite the yards. And I know he's had a few drops, but I think that's just a little bit of youth and the inexperience. But he's still got 13 touchdowns. You can't shade the Pickens side. You can't shade the Johnson side. Desmond or not Des, Desmond Ritter is able to chuck the ball at all levels of the field, and so this combination makes it for a deadly one. My number three team is hard, and I would agree. It's our top four is right in line, but my number three team, I got to go with the Dolphins, and I think Massimo has the ultimate combo of deadly receivers in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Those two guys are just so tough to defend. With Jalen Waddle having a superstar X factor, 98 speed, 98 acceleration, and then you've got Tyreek Hill on the flip side of things, who is also a superstar X factor with 99 speed and 99 acceleration. It is a ultimate challenge to defend one guy with that kind of speed, but when you have two, and whether they line up on the same side of the field or opposite sides, it is just like an ultimate headache. And so I would say that becomes like my number three. And I think like on paper, I would put that as my number one combo. But the reason I put them three is because I feel like at times Massimo gets to be a little too heavy on the pass and doesn't mix in the run enough. And I think this pass, like, so people play the max coverage and take away those passes. So he has a few more turnovers than like per se Ryder, where I think the Dolphins also, for me, have the divisions is tough. He's got like Bill, he's got Kobe, um, and then even Lost Sniper. But I think Ryder doesn't have quite the offensive line that the Dolphins have. And him going up against guys like you, Nate, and Black Cats with the Panthers. The Panthers have a good combination at corner. Nate's got Marcus Lattimore and Matthew. You've got Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell. So I would say on paper, the NFC South has a little bit better DBs and DB tandems and cores to go against. Not saying that the AFC East doesn't have a strong owner or strong division, because they do. They're very deep. But I just like what Ryder's done, and the efficiency that he's been at and how he's been attacking. So that's my 1, 2, 3. Bucks 1, Pittsburgh 2, Dolphins 3, and I would say Kobe, you're definitely could easily be in the top 3. But Aaron Rodgers has got the stats to be there, but I just don't like the receiving core that you have as much as the other 3 teams. I like their receivers a little bit better. But I mean, as I said, any 4 of those teams could be 1, 2, or 3, and it's just a simple little fun ranking. For our last topic, as we are just a little bit over an hour, we're going to wrap this up with our fifth and final topic. This one's going to be a fun one. And I think this is the one that is going to be the most fun. And it's going to just be a rapid fire. It's Dynasty or 1 Year Wonder. I'm going to rattle the teams off. You're going to tell me Dynasty or 1 Year Wonder in your opinion. First team, we're going to go from bottom to top. First team, the Miami Dolphins. Yep. Miami Dolphins, and I did any team that was over 8 wins. So I think we got about 9 or 10 teams. But is it a 1 Year Wonder or are they a dynasty for the entire Madden 24 cycle? We have the Miami Dolphins at 9-4 in the AFC East.
Is there a middle option? No, I think in my heart I want to say he's a dynasty player. Truly, I think though, like it's gonna be for me though. I think it's gonna be 1 Year Wonder, and then I think he's going to fall off, but then he's going to continue to build and then come back and be strong for like the last couple of seasons. So eventually he's going to kind of turn into a dynasty, but I think he's going to be a 1 Year Wonder this season, fall off a little bit. Maybe people kind of learn how to play defense against him, scheme against him, and then. But I'm going to say 1 Year Wonder for now, but looking to turn into a dynasty later on in the Madden cycle.
Next team up we have is the former Indianapolis Colts, now known as the Orlando Condors, at 9-4, a part of the AFC South.
I'm gonna have to go 1 Year Wonder. He's got a young team. He's got a good offensive line. He's still relatively new to the OMFL, but I think he's kind of like he was kind of flying under the radar this first half of the season. Now people are starting to kind of to hone in on kind of how he's doing things. Plus he's went he traded his import quarterback away. He's stuck with the rookie for this season, and so there's been a little bit of some growing pains coming, and he's probably going to face that. But I kind of feel like he's a 1 Year Wonder, but also towards the future, I think he's going to be one of the top players before this Madden is out. So.
Next team we have on the list is your Atlanta Falcons at 9-4, and you are a part of the NFC South.
Oh, the NFC South. We don't actually have anybody with a big mouth in the South, so can't really say that. I'm probably the biggest mouth in the South. So, but I don't know. I mean, I could go. I'm a dynasty. Yeah, just. I think I'm going to be kind of falling into the same category. I think I'm going to be 1 Year Wonder. I'm going to I'm seeing that guys, even though I have a good record, my guys are not wanting to re-sign with my team because they're already saying like they don't have any interest in my team. So that's kind of curious. So I'm kind of afraid because there's a lot of guys that are coming up for contracts. So that could play in a big part of being able to build your team into the seasons as a cycle goes. So to go the long way around, I'm a 1 Year Wonder. I think I could possibly come back and compete, but I'm not going to be no dynasty. It's not going to be like Maniac's going to be the top seed coming out of the South each year in and out. No, it's a 1 Year Wonder for me.
Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills, ran by Bill himself, at 10-3 in the AFC East.
Bill proved, I think, last Madden that he was a dynasty because he was in the top of that division. I think the ones that I knew, at least 3 out of the 4 seasons that I was around for, that I was kind of participating in some form or faction. So I do feel like Bill still has the capability of being a dynasty, and so I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be a dynasty throughout this Madden cycle. I think he's going to he's obviously kind of continued that. He's got a good solid team. Uh, and really, in full essence, the Bills, except for a few pieces here and there, they're a pretty young team as well. He's got a good quarterback locked up for a long term. So that's I think going to play a big role for Bill going forward. So I look at the Bills and Mr. Bill to be a dynasty in Madden 24 in the OMFL.
We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 10-3, and they're part of the NFC South.
Tampa Bay, Kev. He's got the best name, first name in the world, Kevin. All right. So, by the way, if you don't know, my actual name is Kevin. So we share that, and we share the South. And right now, he is a tough team in that Buccaneers. Him and his import quarterback, they do have a repertoire that is hard to stop. And I really think he's going to be the one out of the South that's going to have a dynasty throughout this Madden. But just for the simple fact of that quarterback. Now he may have an off season because I know he's got some guys getting a little older that he's going to have to fill the void eventually. But he's got a good nucleus around that team. So I see him being a dynasty with possibly a down year or so, which could be a year that I could take over, but I don't count any of these guys out of the South either. So, but definitely, I think Kev and the Bucks fit the quality of a dynasty team.
We have the Cincinnati Bengals at 10-2-1 out of the AFC North.
Denbrew and the Bengals, probably that division is probably like one of the stoutest divisions up and down. Every team in that division has either won the North in the last couple Maddens, or has participated in a bowl game, or has won a bowl game. So it's going to be hard to call any team out of this division a dynasty team. But Denbrew has been one of those guys that has been consistent. He's the top half of the OMFL. Seems like each Madden for like the last 3 or 4 Maddens now. So it just feels that way. But I do feel like he has a chance to be a dynasty over there. But with so many teams in that division that are top, I'm gonna have to call him a dynasty, but with like a little bit of a question mark. Whether is it going to be every year? I don't think it's going to be. I think he's going to be uh, participating really well, and then down year participate really well, and down year because he does have some. Uh, he's got a pretty young team, but he does have some holes in certain areas of his team. So um, it's tough, but I do think he is a dynasty coach, if that makes any sense. But the team itself, I don't think it's going to be a dynasty for every season this Madden.
Right. We have the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC West.
Ooh, Seattle, the Seahawks. Meek Boy has came on the scene this Madden and has in his on stream saying after the last win that he had against D Money, put some respect on my name. So we're gonna put some respect on Meek Boy's name and tell him that if he continues to beat D Money, then there is no doubt in my mind that he will have a dynasty over there in that division. I think he's already making a statement. He's got a pretty young team. The Seahawks have, in real life, over the past few seasons, have rebuilt that team into a solid squad. and I think he's just going to continue that in Madden and the OMFL, and I look for him to compete season in and out for the rest of this cycle for sure.
The Dallas Cowboys at 11-1 in the NFC East.
NFC East Cowboys, Mr. Dwayne. Dwayne is like the constant. You can always like count on Dwayne being a power run team and throw off with a play action pass. Like I've seen so many of his games where he's got like 25, 30 carries and he's only passed the ball maybe like 12 times, 15 times. Really efficient. Doesn't look to have the shootout with the quarterback gunslinging competition or nothing like that. But he is a constant, and you can't ever say that he's not going to be a dynasty because Dwayne just he knows how to build teams. He knows how to run with even a team that is not as solid. So definitely the Cowboys are a dynasty for this Madden.
Okay. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 12-0 in the AFC North.
Mr. Cincyberg. Okay, well, I think I saw that he was actually listening earlier. So since you get up real close to the screen, no, I'm just kidding. The Steelers and Cincyberg. I mean, what can you say? Like I said, he's got a quarterback that that some guys could not win a game with, and he's got him in the top 5 QBs in the OMFL in season 106. So anytime you can do that, you're definitely in the running for dynasty. I don't know. I think he could have a year or two down just for the simple fact. Again, he's in that division with the Bengals and the Ravens and the Browns, and they're all solid players and Denver. But I think he's going to be on the cusp of that dynasty being there year in year out for the rest of this Madden. So he's just too good of a coach not to consider being a dynasty team.
I'm going to take a step back because I actually forgot at the beginning. I said all teams above 8 wins, and my Bears are 9-4. So the Bears at 9-4 in the NFC North.
Ooh, the Bears. Well, uh, you're all you're a good man. You're a good coach, and you've won with the Bears the last couple. Well, I say couple Maddens, but I think this last Madden and this Madden is the Madden that you had the Bears, and you've been in the thick of things. The NFC North, as strong as the AFC South is, the NFC North can be either the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde division of the league, and it's been that way for as long as I can remember. There's been some times where teams were 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, and they're winning the division. So, but you and Trey have definitely brought over a sense of more stability in that division. So I definitely see you as a dynasty type owner. I think you're probably going to have a season or two that you're going to be down a little bit because Trey is also a good owner. He gets his team rolling, and you two kind of seem to have a switch off sometimes whenever he's rolling and you have a down team. But definitely, you've got the potential to be a dynasty in that division and with those Bears. So I'm going to give you a dynasty, but potential to be 1-year wonder.
And then the last team here, going back to the top, is the Jets at 13-0 with Kobe. And he is a part of the AFC East.
AFC East is another one of those divisions that are just they are the beast of the AFC. I mean, they've got so many well coached teams, solid owners that know how to build teams. Each one of these guys are extremely good. Kobe, he's just kind of on a different level right now. I do think that he is a dynasty type owner, type coach. and he has the potential to build that team, continue to build that team. So uh, I see dynasty, but I'm not going to say that he's going to run the table every season because you've got guys like Massimo and Bill still there, right there on his heels, and eventually when you play somebody a lot, they tend to get on your tendencies and stuff. So if he's running a lot of the same plays over, over the course of a couple of seasons, eventually guys tend to key in on certain things. So, but he's a dynasty, but I don't think he's going to run the table each season. Could be wrong, but that's the way I see it.
All right. Well, there's Maniacs, Dynasties, or 1-year wonders. I'm going to quickly rapid fire through this as I'm going to try and get this show wrapped up here. I'm going to start back at the bottom. The Bears 9-4 for myself. I do see myself being a dynasty caliber team, but I think that there's some things that have to take place. And you mentioned it with your team in contracts. And I don't know how the game is going to play yet with the contracts. Justin Fields is going to be coming up, big contract. My defensive line needs some work. I got Darnell Mooney, and then I got a big one, my import, Tyson Cash as an outside linebacker. I'm going to have to fix the secondary a little bit. Tyree Stevenson, my rookie's playing well, but my top two guys, Byron Jones and Jalen Johnson, it's like one game they have a good game, the next game they get torched. With Gray and Priest both solid passers. I do expect Deep to continue to get better. The last time I played him, he played me tough for like 3 quarters. I think with his team, Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson, and then the rookie, I think that and TJ Hawkinson, I think they've got a good passing team. I'm going to have to fix that to compete in my division. So I'm going to label myself as a 1-year wonder right now, but I do anticipate myself to compete. I think the Lions have a really solid team. And so I think he bounces back and definitely competes as we've done for several years now. The Miami Dolphins at 9-4. I'm going to say that is a 1-year wonder only because of contracts. When you look at the Dolphins, he's got Tua and his import rookie quarterback, which obviously is locked up for 4 years. But Tua's for 2 more years, and then he's got Tyreek Hill is a big contract. Jalen Waddle is going to be up in a couple of years. He's got Taron Armstead, who's older, but a solid offensive lineman. Jalen Ramsey, some defensive guys that are going to need to be re-signed. He's got Bradley Chubb over there now with like a big contract. I just think that this team is going to run into some contract issues, which is going to put him in a sticky situation, and he's going to have to make a major move, which could hurt his team. And I think that's what happened to Massimo at the end of last cycle. And that would be the only reason. If he can find a way to keep this team intact for the core guys and not like be hurting tremendously in one area that's a key position, then this is a dynasty team because he's got the weapons to do it. But I'm going to label it as a 1-year wonder only because I foresee through my magic 8 ball that he's going to run into a contract sticky situation, and that's going to force him into a 1-year wonder. The next team is the Condors from Orlando, Bronco Man, 9-4. I'm going to label this as a 1-year wonder as well. I do anticipate him to continue to have success with that offensive line. Jonathan Taylor needs to be re-signed. So this is going to be a big contract and an eye to keep, or someone to keep an eye on. And I think he obviously is going to find a way to do it. He does need a few receivers on his team. He did go get Jerry Jeudy, which I do like from a Madden standpoint. And then he's got the rookie Josh Downs. But if he can figure out maybe to add one more receiver, and keep his line intact, that is pretty solid. Re-sign Jonathan Taylor. He'll be in the mix of things, but the AFC South, I anticipate Truth to kind of bounce back and compete. Rodgers got a pretty good young team. He's going to compete. I think Duvall with the Jacksonville Jaguars is also an up-and-coming. he's going to figure things out, and then they're going to kind of just beat up on each other four ways. And I don't think there's going to be really a dynasty team out of the AFC South. If I had to pick one, I would probably say Roger or the Jaguars going forward. I do like those two rosters a lot, but they're both young and they both need a little bit. And I just saw I would pick either the Jags or the Texans only because I like those two rosters the most out of the box. But it's very impressed. I'm very impressed, I should say, with what the Condors have done, and I look to see if he can continue his success. And I think he's going to be fighting for a wild card spot in the division this entire cycle. But I just don't think he's going to be dominating that AFC South to be a dynasty. The next team I have is your Atlanta Falcons at 9-4. The NFC South is a pretty strong division. I do like Black Cats as an owner a lot. I think he's got a young quarterback trying to figure out with Bryce Young. If he can figure out his wide receivers to go along and continue to progress Bryce Young, this offense has the potential to be pretty good. Black Cats has a really strong defense with some young corners that are really good. Kevin, obviously, we know what he's capable of, and he's showing it this season in season 106 with dominating with Ryder. The one thing that I think that is going to be interesting is what he does going forward with his receivers. But I'll talk about him when his team comes up here. And then Nate usually tends to figure things out. He's a solid owner, GM, puts his team in good positions financially in a cap situation. I think if he figures out the quarterback, again, this is a division where four owners going to beat up on each other. But I will say, I like the Falcons roster. And with you going and getting the quarterback that you got, I think your roster is the roster that is set up for success going forward the most, because Parker Colt is that franchise quarterback. You've got Bijan Robinson, the franchise running back. Drake London is performing like a superstar that you've made him with your incentive, bumping him up to a superstar development. He's catching the balls. Kyle Pitts is a nasty tight end. You've got a decent offensive line, and then your defense with like AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates. I think you improve your line and maybe work with the D line a little bit since Grady Jarrett's getting up there in age and Calais Campbell. But I like what you have as a core. And I see the Falcons competing. But it's hard for me to label you as a dynasty because of your competition. And so I anticipate you to be in that, above 500, 10, 9, 10, 11 wins pretty consistently. But I'm worried about the competition that you have, 6 times a year with the Saints twice, the Bucks twice, the Panthers twice. That's 6 tough games. And then whatever other teams land on your schedule, that's going to make it for, a tough sledding to be considered a dynasty. And so I'm like, I wish there was an option that I maybe had in between in this case, but I'm going to have to say a 1-year wonder only because of that competition thing that you have going on with your division. The next team I have is the Bills at 10-3. I agree. Bill has established himself as a dynasty. Even when Bill was a wild card team, at high record, he still competed, made it to the AFC Championship game. The Bills have a great roster. They have the MVP caliber quarterback with Josh Allen. They've got Tre'Davious White, which is a solid corner. The thing is the safeties are a little bit older, and I think those are the guys that kind of ball hawk on the back end. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does going forward on how to replace that. Matt Milano is getting up there in age. Von Miller is getting up there in age. I look to see what he's going to do defensively to replace some of these key veteran guys. But I'm going to say that the Bills remain a staple and a dynasty for this cycle, at least, just because I think he can get through with some of those guys being in their early 30s on the contracts they're in. Next Madden, this might be a different story. The Bengals with Denver at 2-1. I really like Denver as an owner. I think he's a solid owner. He's got the team. I'm a big fan of Burrow. And then he brings in Spencer McGee, which is just a power horse running back. He's got Jamar Chase, which is like an elite receiver. The thing that shocks me, or that I shouldn't say shocks me, but the thing that's going to be the biggest challenge for Denver is cap, because Burrow is got, I think, 3 years left, and then Spencer McGee's got 2. Chase has got 2. In about 2 to 3 seasons, in the middle of this cycle, he's going to have some major decisions to make. And I don't know how he's going to manage or how to retain Chase, Burrow, McGee, and continue to improve his team. He's going to have to hit on some draft picks like he did in previous Maddens. But I anticipate, with Leo Collins probably coming off the block or off the books, Trey Henderson might be somebody he has to move on from with his young defensive end. DJ Reader's another guy that he might have to make a decision on, or BJ Hill. There's ways that he can manage it, but again, he's going to have to hit on a draft pick in some of those spots to be able to move on from some of those guys to retain Jamar Chase, Spencer McGee, Burrow, to keep this team intact. I do see Denver, because he's a solid owner, he's a Bengals fan. I think he retains this team well and makes them the dynasty that they're capable of. The division is tough, but I see the Bengals and the Steelers battling out for this entire Madden in the AFC North. The next team I have to talk about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Kevin. And I was kind of mentioning this a little bit earlier about his receivers. Kevin has a solid team, solid play, like what he's done, especially getting Isaiah Simmons at free safety and then having Antoine Winfield. Again, 2 ball hawking athletic safeties. He's got a decent young group at corner. Linebackers, I really like his linebackers, but Levante David's up there in age. Shaq Barrett's getting up there in age. But he's got Devin White, who he's going to have to re-sign. And then Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who's a pretty solid linebacker. Vita VA is just a game-changing piece in the middle of the defense. The receivers is the big thing for me. Mike Evans, Godwin, they're both going to be up in 1 or 2 years. And so what is he going to do? Who is he going to get? Is he going to draft? Is he going to trade? Is he going to sign someone in the free agency? As we've talked about in the earlier in the show about combinations, Ryder, Evans, and Godwin have lit it up. And so, I mean, he's got 2 years left with Godwin, but I think Mike Evans, if he can maybe franchise tag him, buy him a year, I mean, he's got the cap space with only $64 million to franchise tag Mike Evans if he wants, and see what he can do. He's using Fournette well at the running back spot. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I do label this as a dynasty if he manages his cap well, and what he does with Mike Evans or replacing him, franchise tagging him, whatever. But the Bucs are set up for the future. Again, this is kind of the same situation as the Bills. I think this cycle, the Bucs are set up for success, but I think next Madden 25, could be a different story, because some of these guys like, Levante David and Vita VA, they're going to get, 1 more year older, and the offensive line is going to need some issues or have some issues. And so it's going to matter what this team does in real life in an offseason. But for this Madden cycle, I do have the Bucs labeled as a dynasty. The next team, we have the Seattle Seahawks and Meek. As he said, put some respect on my name. You sound a little bit like Dion. You're coming. We ain't hard to find type of thing. But I'll give you the respect for now. You've been winning the division. I would like to see what it's going to be with D-Money for a full season engaged. But Brad White's coming in, playing good football. Kenneth Walker. Uh, you got two younger receivers in Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Uh, Noah Fant's a good Madden tight end. You've got a great young corners that are tall, fast, and athletic, so you can compete with some of the faster receivers, cores in Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. So I do like what you've got going on in Seattle, and I'm going to say that this is a dynasty team for this cycle, and he needs to figure out maybe one or two pieces to continue things, but I don't see him running into a huge cap problem right now. Most of his big contracts are locked up. So we'll see, but I have them as a dynasty. The next team I have is the Dallas Cowboys and D Wayne. As you said, Mr. Consistent. He runs the ball, he's plays smash mouth football. The thing that concerns me is I'm a Cowboys fan and I know where they sit. And currently he has cap space of $70,000. And you've got Dak in a large contract. You've got Pollard re-signed. CD Lamb is going to be coming up. You know, there's some big contracts. You got Maxwell Bass will be coming back next year after the season-ending injury. Like Tyron Smith is going to be gone. But you have some guys that you need to re-sign still. And then you got guys that are like 2 years out, like DeMarcus Lawrence and Dak. And that might throw a curveball into your plans for one or two, like one season in the middle of this cycle. And if we were to say, let's play 5 or 6 seasons, I could see you being dominant for every season, but maybe one. And that's just because that one cycle or that 1 year where you're going to run into some money issues, you're not going to really have much of an off season because you've got your team the way it is. But we'll see. But it's hard for me to say you're not a dynasty team. So I'm going to say, yes, you're a dynasty team, but one little thing goes wrong in my money wise, you could have that one off year and, you could have a 1 year wonder and then be back on the dynasty train. But for now, I'll list you as a dynasty team. Then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 12-0. I think this team, as I talked about it, very young, very strong core. He brings over a cornerback that's young, that's going to be a stud. Joey Porter is going to continue to improve. Then Minka is 26. This is a team to watch out for. I think since he's going to continue to build this team, this is a dynasty team. And I think the Steelers and the Bengals battle it out year in and year out. And one's going to be a division winner and one's going to be a playoff. You're going to see the Bengals and the Steelers in the playoffs, each year. And possibly a third, depending on how the Browns or the Ravens do. I could definitely see 3 teams from the AFC North making it, but the chickens can be counted on this one. Steelers, Bengals, both dynasties, both making it to the playoffs. They're not going anywhere. The Jets, 13-0, Kobe. It's hard for me to not list you as a dynasty. You've been a solid player year in and year out. Your team is solid. The only big piece that we talked about this earlier, does Aaron Rodgers retire? I think if he retires, you're going to have a quarterback issue. I could see you using Zach Wilson and being effective, maybe not as effective as Aaron Rodgers, but you still have the run game. You still have the weapons. You still have the defense. You're still a strong owner. You're going to figure it out. You're not going anywhere. The Jets, the Bills are going to battle it out. The Dolphins are going to be there. And heck, I can even throw Lost Sniper. He may find a way to get in and push the Dolphins or the Bills or something out of the playoffs and sneak a wild card. But I do anticipate the Jets or the Bills and the Dolphins to compete. They're all dynasties. And I think once Lost Sniper gets his team together, this is going to be a crazy division to watch. But the Jets aren't going anywhere. They're a dynasty, but I'm interested to see what your success is going forward once Rodgers retires. That is the wrap up of the 5 topics that we have. Maniac, do you have anything else that you want to quickly talk about?
Because
All right.
me and Quick don't.
Yeah, me and quick don't go together either. Well, on that note, we are going to wrap the show up. As I said, this is the first show. We look forward to bringing you some OMFL action each week or 2 weeks or so. We wanted to get this show in today with no press pass live. We appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you have a topic that would fit our lineup and what we could talk about on the show, please reach out to me, DM me, shoot me a topic idea, and I'd love to talk about it and throw it out there for an up and coming show. We appreciate you. And until next time, peace.
Later.